Part 11. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 101. Chapter 101. Pastries are okay. Why is it so sudden? Sun Gro asked the same question. After the palace banquet, the troops were dispatched, which took only a few days. Suya had no reaction to this matter, but was worried about what his mother and sister would do after he left. If Su Changqing were to attack the two of them cruelly, he wouldn't be able to come back. But he had already promised King Jin. If he didn't go, he would be deceiving the king. The emperor has long been dissatisfied with the homeless people in the northwest. There have been too many pieces of information sent from the northwest in the past few days, which is why the emperor is so angry. Brother, you. Facing Su Ye's eyes, Suleun swallowed her words to tell him not to go. How could she stop her brother? For a warrior, especially a child of the Sun family, the only option is to die on the battlefield and never to retreat from the battle. How could she say no to her brother? You can go ahead, I'm with you. Suleun closed her eyes. All she could do now was to prevent her brother from worrying about the affairs of the Su family. What's more, my grandpa is still here, so we'll be fine. Yes, yeah, don't worry. I've just prepared cotton clothes for you, so you can take them with you. Sun Gro comforted her, not wanting Suye to worry too much. The courtyard to the west is brightly lit. Su Changqing came in from the small door. When the servants saw him, their expressions did not change much and they all saluted. Yu Niang. Su Changqing entered the room, and Wen Yao sat in front of the bronze mirror to dress up. As soon as he saw his figure, he immediately stood up and came forward. Why are you here? What if someone sees you? With worry on his face, Su Changqing quickly held her hand and explained, don't be afraid. I have arranged for the people in this yard. Even if they see it, no one will tell anyone. Just rest assured. As he said that, he looked around at the empty surroundings and said guiltily, it's just that I didn't make arrangements well, so I'll let you feel aggrieved for the past few days. I'm not wronged, I just feel sorry for you, Sulang. Wen Yao sighed softly and looked at Su Changqing again, her eyes full of pity. I thought she was good to you before, but now I see that you have really suffered too much, Sulang. How can any man not be moved by such caring concern? Su Changqing hugged her waist and walked to the bed. For you Enyang and the child, it's nothing if I suffer a little. Sulang, what should we do next? Wen Yao turned around, hugged the man, and asked softly. This question made Su Changqing pause for a moment, and then he relaxed again quickly. Don't worry, it won't take long before I can marry you in a dignified way. I trust you. The candlelight was dazzling, and an ambiguous atmosphere gradually rose in the room. Early the next morning, Suleun greeted the old lady and walked to the yard. A man appeared on the side of the road. Miss Su-er. Su Yuking's eyes lit up, and she caught up with the things in her hands. Suleun paused slightly and looked at the person coming. Who are you? Sorry, I don't know your name yet. Miss Su-er, just call me Yuking. What's wrong, Miss Yuking? Su Yuking picked up the food box in her hand and said with a smile, Miss Su-er, my mother and I made some desserts and thought about sending them to you. That's troublesome. Suleun motioned to Lian Xian who was following behind. As soon as Lian Xian stepped forward to take it, she saw Su Yuking shrink back. Her expression also became awkward. Miss Su-er, I'll deliver it to your yard in person, it's only a few steps away. Looking at Su Yuking without any trace, Suleun did not refuse. Took Su Yuking to Kaehwaziazu. As soon as she entered the courtyard, Su Yuking's expression changed slightly, with jealousy and envy in her eyes. The courtyard where they lived was just as big as this. But Suleun lives alone. Su Yuking felt more and more uncomfortable. She was also her father's child, Why couldn't she enjoy this? Miss Yuking, please come in. Suleun had already entered the house. When Lian Xian saw Su Yuking staying where she was, she greeted him. The house is very warm, and although there are not many decorations that catch the eye, they are all exquisite. Obviously I put my heart into it. Su Yuking suppressed her jealousy, put the food box on the table, and took out a plate of pastries from it. Miss Su-er, try it while it's hot. I just finished my meal and stopped eating. Suleun explained, looking across the cakes. Seeing this, Su Yuking naturally couldn't persuade her anymore, but her eyes fell on the surrounding area and she couldn't move away. This hairpin is really nice. Seeing Suleun pick up a hosta, Su Yuking couldn't help but make a sound. The greed in his eyes flashed. As long as my mother becomes the mistress of Su Mansion, these things will belong to her from now on. Suleun glanced at her, unable to tell what Su Yuking was thinking. She put away the hosta and said, "It's just some vulgar things, but its sister Wana side that is really good." Seeing the growing dissatisfaction in Su Yuking's eyes, Suleun narrowed his eyes and a smile flashed across his eyes. When Wenyayo and the others arrived at the house in the last life, Su Wainer was already entangled with King Yu. At that time, Su Yuking and Su Wainer were working together and did many things to frame her. But in this life, she wanted to see if the two of them could still help each other like they did in the previous life. Su Yuking knew Su Wainer's identity, and she felt even more dissatisfied when she heard what Suleun said. A fake rich man can live so well. The displeasure in her eyes could no longer be suppressed, so she stood up and said, "I still want to send it to Miss Su. I'm afraid it will get cold if it's too late, so I'll leave first." Suleun looked at Su Yuking's leaving figure and his eyes fell on the cakes. The pastries are uniquely made and fragrant. "Miss, what's wrong with this pastry?" Seeing Suleun staring at the cakes, Lian Xian asked. Suleun shook his head and said, "No problem. You take this pastry and share it with everyone." "I don't want to eat it." "Those three people are not stupid, and they cannot be stupid enough to poison the cake." She just looked disgusting and had no appetite. Lian Xian seemed to understand something and hurriedly took away the cakes. Suleun went to the side room and began to make medicine for his grandfather to cure rheumatism. The sun gradually moves away. Lian Xian knocked on the door. "Miss, something happened in the peony garden." "What's the matter?" When Suleun heard this, his expression did not change and he carefully poured the ground powder into the bowl. "I heard that the eldest lady ate something and fainted." As she spoke, Lian Xian always felt that something was strange, but she couldn't figure it out for the moment. Suleun slowly arranged the table and then went out. What a coincidence, something happened to her just as someone sent pastries. "Miss, are you saying that Miss Yuking has drugged the eldest lady?" After Lian Xian said this, she shook her head, "But miss, didn't you say that there is nothing wrong with the cake? If there is any problem, let's go and take a look and find out." Suleun pursed his lips and smiled softly. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 102. Chapter 102, 3 Days of Drunkenness. The peony garden is particularly lively. The old lady was restless in the house, waiting anxiously for the news. "Old madam, please sit down. Miss Warner will be fine." Mama Zhao persuaded and pulled the old lady to sit down. "Old madam, people have brought it." A nun pushed Su Yuking into the room and kicked her knees. Su Yuking knelt directly on the ground. Wenyayo followed behind, stumbling and looking panicked. When she caught a glimpse of Su Yuking, the old lady became angry. She didn't like Wenyayo at all, even if Su Yuking and Su Changzhong were her granddaughters and grandsons, she still looked down upon them. If it weren't for her son and the child in Wenyayo's belly, she would not have allowed these three people to approach the Su mansion. Unexpectedly, Something happened as soon as I arrived. What medicine did you give Wan'er? The old lady asked with a cold face. Suyuking cried immediately, Old madam, I didn't. How could I drug Sister Wan'er? She really wasn't drugged. How could she put medicine in the cakes she sent out? Isn't this just a case of letting people take advantage of it? Old madam, you are aware that this child Yuking will not do such a thing. Wen Yao held her belly and looked at the old lady pleadingly. It seems to be reminding the old lady that she is still pregnant with a child. The old lady's eyes flashed slightly when she saw her actions. There was indeed something fishy about it. Wouldn't it be too fair to administer the drug like this? Old Madam Dr. John came out and gestured to the old madam, his expression a bit ugly. I'm afraid the eldest lady has been drunk for 3 days. Suleun raised his eyebrows lightly when he saw Dr. Zhang. Dr. Zhang and Su Weiner were the same, so there was no guarantee that he would not help Su Weiner with some tricks. What will happen to Wan'er after being drunk for 3 days? The old lady leaned on crutches and asked, with an anxious face. It was obvious that she was really worried about Su Wan'er. Dr. Zhang replied, these 3 days of drunkenness will put the eldest lady into a coma, and she will not be able to wake up for 3 whole days. When the eldest lady wakes up after 3 days, if she does not take the antidote, her body will gradually become exhausted. Dr. Zhang, can you make an antidote? As soon as she heard this, the old lady's back bent, and her face became even more ugly. Suyuking, who was kneeling on the ground, was trembling all over. She didn't know what 3 days of drunkenness was, so how could Su Weiner be poisoned? Wen Yao also clenched her fists. This was really weird. Don't worry, madam. I happen to know this 3-day drunken man. If another doctor comes to consult, he might not be able to find out the problem. Just don't worry, I can make this antidote. Dr. Zhang paused. Then he said, I will give the eldest lady an acupuncture later, maybe she can wake up early. That's good, I'll just trouble Dr. Zhang. The old lady breathed a sigh of relief and was supported by Aunt Zhao. Dr. Zhang also looked around, his eyes met Suleun's, and then he immediately looked away. Suleun narrowed his eyes. I am afraid this matter is not that simple. Now that we know that Su Weiner is fine, we should investigate the poisoning matter. The old lady sat on the main seat and looked coldly at Su Yuking, who was kneeling on the ground. You'd better tell me exactly what is going on. Old madam, Yuking dare not lie to you. I really did not poison you. I have never heard of such a thing as being drunk for 3 days. Please be careful, old madam. Su Yuking cried, her eyes filled with tears, but she couldn't make the old lady feel pity for her at all. Bring the pastries over and let Dr. Zhang have a look. Soon, Su Weiner's maid Yuyao served the cakes. Dr. Zhang used a silver needle to probe and it immediately turned black. Apparently poisonous. Suleun stared at the cake, thinking in his mind. She has heard that 3 days of drunkenness is a liquid that is colorless but has a fragrance, which is somewhat like the fragrance of apricot blossoms. Perhaps it was a bit far away, so she didn't seem to smell anything. Logically speaking, she should be able to smell it from this distance. The old lady saw the silver needle and snorted coldly, this pastry is really poisoned, what else do you have to explain? I really don't know, I didn't do it. Su Yuking just kept saying this sentence over and over again. She didn't know why the cake was poisoned, but she knew very well that she couldn't accept it. Wen Yao's eyes turned red, and she knelt down. Old madam, Yu Qing really wouldn't do this. Yu Qing and I made this cake together, and everyone in the yard has come into contact with this cake. What's more, we are temporarily staying in the Su mansion, how could we poison Miss Su? What he said was true, but it was also true that Su Weiner was poisoned now. Just as the old lady was thinking about it, she saw Su Changqing walking in a hurry. Seeing Wen Yao kneeling on the ground, he stepped forward to help him up. Wen Yao met his gaze, shook her head slightly, and cast her eyes in one direction. It is Suleun. Su Changqing clearly saw Suleun, but didn't care. He stretched out his hand and pulled Wen Yao up. Changjing said, "You are pregnant, what if you hurt the child?" Su Changqing said, glancing at Suleun, "You are a relative of Lu Hong, and naturally a relative of our Su family. Don't wrong yourself." The following sentence seems to be an explanation to Suleun. Suleun lowered his head and sneered. "Fortunately, my mother didn't come, otherwise she would have vomited out last night's meal when she saw these two people acting pretentious." "Thank you, Lord Marquis." Wen Yao slowly let go of her hand, and her fingertips traced across Su Changqing's palm without leaving a trace. Then she raised her head and looked at Su Changqing with tearful eyes. "Master Ho, Yu Qing will never do this. I hope that you and the old lady will investigate this matter for Yu Qing. Don't worry, I will definitely find out the truth of the matter." Su Changqing then looked at Su Yuqing and quickly ordered, "Hurry and help Yuqing up." "Master Ho." The old lady reminded, but Su Changqing did not listen. The son, who had always been filial, started to go against her will for a woman, which made the old lady, who always liked to control the situation, feel uneasy. Her cold gaze passed over Wen Yao. This woman was really powerful, so she had to be careful. "Mother, the matter has not been decided yet. Yuqing should not be allowed to kneel down. She is also a guest in the house after all." When Su Yuqing was helped up, Su Changqing realized what he had just done and quickly explained to the old lady. The old lady pointed at the pastry. "This is the pastry she sent." Wanner fell unconscious after eating this pastry. If it wasn't her who poisoned her, who else could it be? "Mom, didn't cousin Wen just say that there are quite a few people who have access to pastries? Maybe someone among them was poisoned." Cousin in one sentence, everyone present showed different expressions. Suleun suppressed the feeling of nausea. Why didn't she know that Su Changqing was so shameless before? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 103. Chapter 103. No poisoning. Wen Yao is now Lu Hong's nominal cousin, so it's not wrong for Su Changqing to call her cousin. From the perspective of the uninitiated, Su Changqing is very concerned about this uncle's cousin, and the words he uses appear to be close to her. But for those who know about it, the sound of cousin really gives people goosebumps. The old lady narrowed her eyes slightly. She couldn't deny her son face in front of so many people, so she could only say, "Then go and catch everyone who has touched the cakes, and I will ask them one by one." "Yes." Mama Zhao agreed and quickly ordered her servants to bring the person over. Soon, all the servants in Wen Yiu's courtyard were brought over. There were 3 people in total, kneeling on the ground, trembling, not knowing what had happened. "Did you make this pastry?" Mother Zhao asked aloud. "A few of you looked at me, I looked at you, lowered your head and replied, slave is only responsible for the subordinates. Speak one by one." The slaves help to dispose of the ingredients. A maid arrives. The slave is responsible for lighting the fire. A boy has arrived. The slaves shape the cakes. The last nanny arrived. Mama Zhao asked again, "Besides the 3 of you, who else is there?" Mrs. Wen and Miss Yuqing did the rest. The slaves did not interfere. Mammy returned quickly. Su Changqing made up an identity for Wen Yao, saying that her husband passed away and the mother and son were kicked out by her husband's family, so they had no choice but to come to Lu Hong. Therefore, when it comes to titles, people in the house are asked to call them Madam, Miss, etc. to show respect. "Did you put poison in the cake?" Su Changqing asked in a deep voice when he saw the old lady's expression showing some impatience. As soon as these words came out, the 3 of them all turned pale. The Marquis knows it well, how dare the slaves put poison in the cakes. Just as he was talking, a woman came in from outside the house and said to the old lady, "Old lady, we have sent people to search, but the poison that Dr. Zhang mentioned was not found. I just found this from Miss Yuking's room." The mother-in-law stepped forward and handed over a string of agate bracelets. When Aunt Zhao saw the bracelet, she said, "It seems that you, madam, gave this bracelet to the eldest lady before. The eldest lady likes it very much. Could it be that Miss Yuking poisoned the eldest lady in order to steal this bracelet?" The people present had vague suspicions. "What's going on with this bracelet?" The old lady took the bracelet and spoke slowly. Su Yuking caught a glimpse of the bracelet and said in a panic, "Old madam, don't get me wrong. Sister Warner gave it to me. She said she thought I was destined to be with her, so she gave me this bracelet. She also said I was older than her and asked me to call her sister, and Yuking will never dare to steal anything. The eldest lady likes this bracelet very much, why would she give it away for no reason?" Mama Zhao was a little confused. She spoke in a low voice, but everyone present heard her clearly. Although no poison was found, it does not mean that no one poisoned it. Coupled with the discovery of this bracelet, suspicion seems to have fallen on Su Yuking again. "Can anyone prove that this was sent to you by Warner?" the old lady asked. These words made Su Yuking's face stiffen. She and Su Weiner were in the room at that time, and there was no one else, not even the maid. How can she find someone to prove it? "Old madam, Mr. Ho, there were only Sister Warner and Yuking at that time. Yuking didn't dare to lie to you." Su Yuking cried in grievance, looking at Su Changqing with tears in her eyes. How could Su Changqing bear it when his daughter begged like this? But what's more, the child lying in the room was not his child at all. It was clear at a glance which one was more important. "Mother, my son thinks what Yuking said is true. Warner has always been kind, so it's not a big deal to give Yuking a bracelet." As soon as the words fell, I heard, "Grandma." Su Warner's weak voice came from the back room. Upon hearing this, the old lady turned around and looked. Seeing Su Weiner wrapped in a coat, she was helped out by Yuyeo. "Warner, how do you feel?" "Grandma, Warner is much better. I worry you." Su Weiner smiled, looking a bit like a sickly beauty. It also made the old lady feel more and more distressed. "Sister Warner, please explain to everyone that you really gave me this bracelet." Su Yuking's eyes lit up when she saw Su Weiner coming out, and she quickly shouted. The bracelet was clearly given to her by Su Weiner herself. How could it be stolen by her? "Bracelet," Su Weiner seemed to have not heard clearly, with confusion on her face. Mama Zhao handed the bracelet to Su Weiner. "Miss, this is this agate bracelet. Isn't this given to me by my grandmother? Why is it in your hands, Aunt Zhao?" Su Weiner looked confused. Su Yuking became anxious when she heard this. "Sister Warner, have you forgotten? I gave you cakes this morning. You said you were destined to me, so you gave me this bracelet." "Warner, is what she said true?" the old lady also asked. Su Warner frowned, seeming to have some difficulty recalling. "Grandma, Warner is a little confused. It seems that there is such a thing, but I seem to just want to lend it to Miss Yuking to take with her." "Sister Warner, you clearly said you would give it to me as a gift." Su Yuking never expected that Su Weiner would explain it like this. She clearly remembered that Su Weiner said she wanted to give it to her. "Shut up, you don't have the right to speak now." The old lady glared at her angrily and continued to look at Su Weiner. Wen Yao pulled Su Yuking's sleeve and shook her head to signal her to calm down. The current situation makes it difficult to talk too much. Later, Miss Yuking took her and left. "I wanted someone to chase me, but I fainted after following them." Su Weiner said while thinking about it. Her expression became a little pale. "Like being in great pain." Yuyeo quickly continued, "Old madam, the eldest lady did ask the slave to chase Miss Yuking, but she fainted before she could finish her words. "Grandma, what's wrong with me?" Suwaner held her head. "Why did I faint suddenly?" "Miss, please sit down quickly." Yuyeo supported Suwaner and sat down. The old lady looked at Suwaner, her eyes full of pity. "Waner, someone has poisoned this pastry, and you have been poisoned." "Poisoned? What's going on?" Suwaner looked at the cake, and then looked at Suyuking in disbelief. "This pastry was brought by Miss Yuking. Did you poison me?" "I didn't poison." Suyuking's explanation was very pale, but soon her eyes lit up. "Sister Waner, have you forgotten? I also ate this pastry." As she said that, she seemed to have found a way out, and rushed to the pastry. As expected, in addition to the piece Suwaner had eaten, there was another piece of pastry that had been broken open, and half of it was gone. "Look." Suyuking raised the pastry with a happy expression on her face. Suwaner's eyes darkened a bit. Why did Suyuking think of her at this time? She coughed a few times to attract everyone's attention. "Yes, Miss Yuking did eat cakes with me. It's just that after Miss Yuking left, I ate some more and fainted." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 104. Chapter 104 Nopals. Yuyeo was glanced at by Suwaner and hurriedly stepped forward and said, "As soon as the slave brought tea, Miss Yuking left the house anxiously." The slave called a few times. When the slave entered the room later, she saw that the eldest lady was already there. "Passed out." These words were ambiguous, but they drew everyone's suspicious eyes to Suyuking. Suleun knew clearly that Suwaner's poisoning was fake, and he was afraid that Suyuking's frame-up was real. Just looking at Suwaner's face, she is indeed weak, but if you look more closely at her eyes and lip color, you will find that the look of weakness is just an act. Normally, the lips of a person who has been poisoned should be a little blue, and the whites of the eyes should also become cloudy. But Suwaner didn't have it at all. But why did she frame Suyuking? Suleun observed the two of them without leaving a trace. Suyuking knew her identity, so whether she was facing Suwaner or her, she would always feel a little unwilling. Must be that she feels that she, who is also Suho, has no choice but to rely on others, and is very unwilling to do so. Suwaner's attitude is a bit strange. Suleun narrowed her eyes. Could it be that Suwaner knew something? For example, Suyuking's identity. How else to explain why she did something to a nominal guest? Although it was unclear how Suwaner learned about this, Suleun was happy to watch the fun, so he leaned on the back of his chair and watched the farce with a leisurely expression. "You didn't call me at all." Suyuking became angry as soon as she heard Yuyeo's words. A maid dared to lie. Su Changqing also turned cold. "You, a maid, don't talk nonsense. The Marquis knows it well, I don't dare to tell any lies." Perhaps Miss Yuking was walking in a hurry at that time and didn't hear the servant's cry. Yuyeo knelt on the ground, her face pale but her expression firm. The explanation is clear and logical, making it difficult for people to find problems. "Father, Yuyeo has been with me for a long time. I know her temperament and will never tell such lies." Suwaner surprisingly kindly spoke up for Yuyeo, and then said, "There may be some misunderstanding about the poisoning. After all, there are so many people who have been exposed to pastries." Suwaner supported her sick body, and her generous words now made everyone feel that she was kind-hearted. The eldest lady is still so kind and even helps the maid to intercede. Otherwise, why would anyone poison the eldest lady because they think she is easy to bully? There were mutterings everywhere. In this way, Suwaner has gained herself some good reputation. "Miss Yuking, apart from the people who helped you, you probably didn't look at this pastry all the time on the way to the peony garden, right?" "I." Suyuking blinked, and her eyes suddenly fell on Suleun. Suleun frowned, feeling a little uneasy. I met Miss Suir on the road, so I sent it to her first. Sister Yunur, you shouldn't do such a thing, even though we had some disagreements before. Suwanur's eyebrows were covered with a smile. This Suyuking gave her a surprise. This time, Suleun can be brought in. Suleun had already been prepared when Suyuking's eyes fell on him. I just didn't expect that she originally wanted to watch a play, but now she became an actor in the play again. Miss Yuking did come to my yard and gave me cakes. Suleun responded calmly, without any panic. Su Changqing frowned. Did you poison Wan'er? What do you say, father? Why should I poison Sister Wan'er? So many things have happened since you came back. This matter must have something to do with you. Su Changqing's indiscriminate words made Suleun laugh out loud. Father, Miss Yuking was said to be poisoned, and you just said you believed her. Why did she end up here? It must be related to me. If you didn't know, you would have thought that Miss Yuking was the one who poisoned her. Is it your daughter? What nonsense are you talking about? Su Changqing's face froze and he was furious. Did I say something wrong? You can trust a person who has only been here for 2 days so much, so why don't you believe me? If you tell me this, won't others think so? Suleun said with sarcasm in his eyes. Father, if you want others to know nothing but yourself, don't you understand? What do you mean? She knows. Su Changqing was a little flustered. Suleun twitched his lips and said, Father, I mean, I have never done this. That's it? Su Changqing breathed a sigh of relief. Su Wan'er looked at the two of them and said anxiously, Father, don't be angry. I don't know that my sister ate that pastry. Why don't you let Dr. Zhang take a look? Okay. Second miss, please extend your hand and let me see my pulse. Dr. Zhang motioned to Suleun to extend his hand. Suleun slowly stretched out his hand and looked at Dr. Zhang with a half-smile. The latter felt a little palpitated for no reason and carefully held Suleun's pulse. But the next second, his expression suddenly changed. No pulse. Dr. Zhang suddenly let go of his hand, his expression so panicked that it was hard to ignore. Dr. Zhang, what's wrong? Su Wan'er frowned. Dr. Zhang's reaction was not quite right. I wonder how my pulse is, are there any signs of poisoning? Suleun seemed not to notice and asked curiously. Dr. Zhang swallowed his saliva and said, I'll take a look again. Still no pulse. At this time, even Dr. Zhang was completely panicked and quickly backed away from Suleun. Second miss has no pulse. Dr. Zhang, what did you say? Suleun pretended to be confused, and the others looked at Dr. Zhang in surprise. What is he talking about? Miss Suir is here perfectly fine, how could she not have a pulse? Dr. Zhang, are you mistaken? Take a closer look. Su Wan'er gritted her teeth and emphasized the last two words, looking a little ugly. Without a pulse, can a person still live? This Zhang Shan has problems at critical moments, so he sincerely causes trouble for her. Really not, the second lady really has no pulse. Dr. Zhang did not dare to move forward or even look at Suleun. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. The expression was so real that it made everyone feel chilled and looked at Suleun. Suleun looked helpless. Dr. Zhang, you must be mistaken. Look at me standing here. If I don't have a pulse, how can so many people hear me? When Dr. Zhang heard this, he became suspicious. Could it be that he had taken the wrong pulse? Thinking like this, he stepped forward tremblingly and put his hand on Suleun's wrist. This time, I finally have a pulse. But before Dr. Zhang could breathe a sigh of relief, his expression changed again. He stared at Suleun, his expression getting more and more ugly. What's going on with this pulse? Dr. Zhang, how are you doing? I don't know. The longer Dr. Zhang took the pulse, the more his face changed. Even though he has a pulse, it is clearly a death pulse. Even if he is not dead, he is not far from death. K. Suleun is clearly in good shape. What's going on with him? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 105. Chapter 105 It's True Love. Are you tired, Dr. Zhang? After all, it took a lot of effort to perform acupuncture on Sister Wan'er, so you should take a good rest. I remember there is a doctor in the house, why don't you let him come and take a look at it for me? Suleun looked like he was thinking about Dr. Zhang. What do you think, Grandma? The old lady nodded, and soon a young doctor rushed over. Wang Lu gives it to the old lady, and the Marquis sends his regards. Dr. Wang, please get up, the old lady said calmly, go forward and feel the second lady's pulse. Yes. Wang Lu walked to Suleun and said, Second miss, please extend your hand. Everyone looked at Wang Lu and felt a little nervous. They all want to know what's going on with the second young lady's pulse. For a moment, Wang Lu withdrew his hand and said to the old lady, back to the old lady, the second lady's pulse is stable and there is nothing wrong. Are you sure? The old lady's inexplicable question confused Wang Lu. Second Mrs. Pulse condition is indeed fine, maybe Dr. Zhang can take another look. When his name was called, Dr. Zhang tentatively said, are you sure the second lady's pulse is normal? Seeing Dr. Zhang questioning himself, Wang Lu felt even more puzzled. Dr. Zhang, even a beginner can see this pulse condition, not just me, so how can there be a problem? But Dr. Zhang checked my pulse the first 2 times and said I had no pulse, and the third time he said he didn't know. Suleun looked confused. We thought it was because Dr. Zhang had worked to the acupuncture just now, so he couldn't get it out. How can it be? Wang Lu shook his head repeatedly. Dr. Zhang's medical skills are better than mine. Even if he is overworked, it is impossible for him to make such a deviation. Is it possible that it's Dr. Zhang's medical skills? Suleun pursed his lips. After all, Dr. Zhang didn't notice the last time Hong Heiji was poisoned. I'm worried that there might be something wrong with Dr. Zhang himself. There is a precedent for this. Some doctors may be unable to diagnose the pulse correctly when they are old or have something happen to affect their hands. I don't. Dr. Zhang retorted that he knew very well that there was nothing wrong with his medical skills, but he just failed with Suleun. Suleun didn't give Dr. Zhang a chance and said to Wang Lu, Dr. Wang, why don't you take a look at Sister Wan'er? Dr. Zhang just performed acupuncture on Sister Wan'er. I'm worried that something went wrong. Miss, please. No. Suleun never imagined that things would develop like this. She saw that the plan was succeeding, so why did something happen at this point? Sister Wan'er, you don't want anything to happen to you, Grandma is worried about you. Suleun glanced at the old lady, as if he was thinking about her. Wan'er, let Dr. Wang take a look. The old lady was naturally worried about Suleun. When she said these words, Suleun did not dare to refuse. Wang Lu put his hand down and asked after a while, Miss, there is nothing wrong with your body, why did you let Dr. Zhang give you acupuncture? Dr. Zhang said I was poisoned. Suleun pushed the matter to Dr. Zhang. The latter opened his eyes wide and wanted to explain, but when he met Suleun's gaze, he closed his mouth again. It seems that something is wrong with Dr. Zhang. The eldest lady's pulse is better than the second lady's. It doesn't look like she has been poisoned. Wang Lu smiled and shook his head, seemingly not noticing the changes in the expressions of the people around him. Su Changqing stared at Dr. Zhang with a gloomy face. He finally saw that it was this quack doctor's fault. Su Yuqing breathed a sigh of relief, while Wen Yao looked at Su Wan'er and Suleun, hiding the inquiring in her eyes. She doesn't think this matter is entirely Dr. Zhang's fault. It is really rare for an official of a prince's government to take the wrong pulse for no reason. But she was not sure whether it was Amelia Su or Suleun, or both of them were involved in this matter. She thought these 2 young ladies were no threat before, but now she saw that each of them had their own agenda. She must be careful. Since something like this has happened to Dr. Zhang, he won't have to work in the Marquis mansion anymore. Someone, send Dr. Zhang out. Su Changqing spoke with a gloomy face. Soon, servants came up and lifted Dr. Zhang up. Dr. Zhang remained silent and allowed his servants to carry him out. Dr. Wang, since water is not poisoned, why is this cake poisonous? The old lady pointed to the blackened silver needle on the edge of the pastry and asked. Wang Lu stepped forward and picked up the silver needle and looked at it, then put it down, took another piece of pastry, and smiled helplessly. Back to the old lady, I'm afraid it's because egg yolk is added to this pastry. If the silver needle meets egg yolk, it will also cause, it turns black, so silver needles alone are not enough for poison testing, and other methods are needed. So that's it, I said Miss Yuking wouldn't poison her. This is a complete coincidence. Su Wan'er smiled happily and described the matter as a coincidence. But why did Sister Wan'er faint? Su Leun didn't want her to put the matter aside so easily, so he asked deliberately. This question made everyone confused again. Although what happened next seemed like a coincidence, if Su Wan'er hadn't fainted, such a coincidence would not have happened. Su Changqing stared at Su Wan'er for a while. What is going on? Su Wan'er shook her body and said, Father, Wan'er really doesn't know. Okay, that's it for now. Aunt Zhao, go to the warehouse and get some satin jewelry and send them to Mrs. Wen's yard as an apology to me, the old woman. The old lady smashed her cane and didn't want to talk more about this matter. Su Leun shrugged. He had to say that the old lady really loved Su Wan'er. Su Changqing did not dare to disobey the old lady, so she could only suppress the matter. Seeing that the excitement was gone, everyone dispersed. Back to Kaihwaziazu. Before entering the house, Kuliu's expression tightened. Miss, there seems to be someone in the house. Lian Xian protected Su Leun. Miss, let Kuliu go take a look first. It's okay, we are one of our own. Su Leun stepped forward and opened the door, and there was indeed a person in the room. One of my own people? Lian Xian and Kui Lu looked at each other and followed into the house. Kui Lu took a step behind and closed the door. Su Leun looked at the person and asked, where is he? It's closed not far from Su Mansion. Don't let him die, you can take care of the other matters yourself. Yes. The man left the house quickly. Lian Xian stepped forward carefully and asked, Miss, who is that person? He is Sun Wen, the elder brother of Sun Wu. Sun Wen and Sun Wu were originally with Sun Gro, but Sun Gro was worried that there were not enough manpower around Su Leun, so she placed Sun Wen, who was more powerful in martial arts, beside Su Leun. Su Leun has not had time to tell Lian Xian, Kuliu and others about this matter. No wonder my slave looks familiar to his eyes. Sun Wen had just covered his face, and Lian Xian could only see a pair of eyes, which indeed looked very similar to Sun Wu's. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 106. Chapter 106 Glass. Miss, what did he mean by what he just said? Kuliu remembered the previous conversation between the two and spoke tentatively. Su Leun smiled and glanced at the two of them. It's better that you don't know about this. Miss. Mammy Zhang held a set of hair and facial expressions in her hands, followed by several maids who carefully held a set of luxurious palace clothes and walked into the house. My wife asked you to try it on for size. If there is any problem, there is still time to correct it. Seeing this palace uniform, Su Leun remembered that there would be a palace banquet in 3 days. She got up and put on her palace clothes with the help of her maids. Because it is worn in winter, this palace dress will be a bit heavy. However, the fabric is soft, and although it is heavy, it is not uncomfortable. Looking through the bronze mirror, the size fits perfectly, showing off Suleun's waist. Mother Zhang nodded, there's nothing that needs to be changed. While helping Suleun take off the palace clothes, Grandma Zhang said, Miss, don't go out these days. It would be bad if something goes wrong before the palace banquet. Don't worry, Mama, I know it well. Suleun smiled. On the second day, he quietly left the house with Qilayu and Liang Xin. Two maids followed Suleun in a panic. Miss, didn't Grandma ask you not to go out? If you don't tell me, I won't know. Suleun was veiled and hissed, his eyes full of smiles. Took the two of them to the busiest street. There were people coming and going around. Qilayu and Liang Xin followed Suleun closely, fearing that they would be lost. Zhenbao Pavilion. The most famous grocery store in Beijing. The best-selling items in the store are gold and silver jewelry, but apart from that, they can find anything else for customers as long as they want it and can afford the price. A few guests, please come inside and take a look. As soon as we entered Zhenbao Pavilion, the waiter came up to greet us with a particularly enthusiastic attitude. As far as you can see, there are many customers in the store, all choosing what they like. Suleun didn't look at that. What she wanted was not on the second floor. Can the second floor be opened? The second floor of Zhenbao Pavilion is not open all the time, but only every few days. As soon as the waiter heard Suleun's question, he immediately said, the second floor is open today. Miss, please come here. Following the waiter, Suleun went up to the second floor. There are not many guests on the second floor, and it is quieter than downstairs. Qilayu and Liang Xin did not dare to speak, so they could only follow Suleun step by step. This is their first time coming to Zhenbao Pavilion. I have only heard of this place in the past. After looking around, Suleun finally found what he wanted to buy. Mitigation. Excuse me, what is the price? Suleun waved to the waiter, who quickly ran over, took a look, and replied, Miss, this is made by Master Taixin, and the price is 300 taels. 300 taels. Lian Xin couldn't help but let out a soft cry and quickly covered her mouth. No wonder the young lady was asked to bring all the banknotes she had when she went out today. Such a breast shield actually costs 300 taels. Suleun is not surprised. The lowest price of anything that can be placed on the second floor of Zhenbao Pavilion will not be less than 100 taels. What's more, it's made with an iron heart by a master blacksmith. Her brother is about to go on an expedition, so sending this will protect her, and she will feel at ease. I'll buy. Sister Yunur. Just as Suleun opened his mouth, a voice came from the side. Looking up, the people who had just walked up the stairs were Su Weiner and Li Rui. Yesterday I was complaining about feeling unwell, but today I went out. Suleun turned his eyes away and ignored it. Please wrap this goggles for me. Okay, wait a moment, miss. Sister Yunur, I didn't expect you to come here, but what do you fancy? If you don't have enough money, tell me. In front of outsiders, Su Weiner always acted like a good sister. Suleun said coldly, no need, I have already bought it, sister, you can do whatever you want. After saying that, Suleun was about to leave without taking another look at Su Weiner. Unexpectedly, he stretched out a hand from his side and held her. Didn't Miss Suer see me? When Li Rui reached out his hand, he didn't even realize why he did it. But seeing that Suleun didn't even look at him, he always felt a little unhappy. Just because he doesn't like Suleun doesn't mean that Suleun can ignore him. Suleun's eyes fell on his arm, and he raised his eyes and looked at Li Rui coldly. Master Li, just keep talking and don't move your hands all day long. If you don't know, you will think you are attracted to me. You're talking nonsense, how could I possibly fall in love with you? Li Rui quickly let go of his hand and jumped to attract the attention of people around him. Su Weiner pulled Li Rui and said, "Brother Rui, Sister Yuner is joking." Her eyes flickered, and Li Rui's reaction made her a little uneasy. "Miss, your things are packed." The waiter handed over the packaged goggles. "You just pay in front of the counter downstairs." "Thank you." Suleun pursed her lips and smiled, and Lian Xian took the breast mirror. Li Rui frowned. She could smile like this at a waiter, but why was she so cold towards him? Is it possible that a waiter is better than him? "Brother Rui, didn't you say you planned to buy a new gift for Sister Yuner? Sister Yuner happens to be here, why don't you just ask Sister Yuner what she likes?" Su Weiner pulled Li Rui and reminded him. Li Rui was about to refuse, but when he saw Suleun's cold expression, he took a deep breath and said, "Okay, just choose whatever you like." Seeing Li Rui's reaction, Su Weiner became more and more uneasy, but she still had a smile on her face. "Sister Yuner, just choose and see. Don't let Brother Rui's kindness go down." Seeing that Su Weiner looked like she wouldn't let her go if she didn't choose, Suleun raised his eyebrows, and the corners of Vale's lips twitched. "Okay, then I'm welcome. Since Li Rui wants to give it away, she can make it happen. If I choose, can Mr. Li really give it to me?" Suleun asked while walking around. "It's natural. I never tell lies." Li Rui held his breath and followed Suleun, but he didn't even pay attention to Su Weiner. Suleun walked around and stopped in front of the cups. "Whether it is a teacup or a teapot, they are both transparent. Miss, this is called a glass, and it's shipped from a foreign country." Seeing Suleun's interest, the waiter quickly introduced it. Suleun nodded. "That's quite interesting. How much does the set cost?" "The glass itself is not expensive, but it's a set that costs 100 taels. "Then I want it. You ask Mr. Li to pay for it?" "Okay." Sold 2 orders in a row, so the waiter was naturally happy. Li Rui watched the waiter take out the set of glasses and frowned. "You want this thing? Didn't young Master Li ask me to choose at will? Why, are you not happy to give it away? If young Master Li regrets it, you can refuse it now." Suleun shrugged nonchalantly. Li Rui choked, "I didn't mean that, just buy it if you like." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 107. Chapter 107. Not very happy. Seeing the two of them talking without paying attention to herself, Su Weiner could not bear it. Walked to Li Rui and said softly, "Brother Rui, I think this glass is quite interesting. I wonder if there is a second set. I want it too. Waiter, bring me another set of these glasses." Su Weiner opened her mouth. Why didn't Li Rui agree? She shouted to the waiter. After a moment, the waiter ran over with an embarrassed look on his face and said, "Here are some guests, this is the only set of glasses. If you want it, you will have to wait for half a month. Otherwise, why don't you look at something else?" "Sister Yuner, it's just a coincidence. It will be a long time to wait for another half month. Maybe I have no chance to meet the glass." Su Weiner frowned slightly, her voice was extremely lost. Li Rui looked at Su Weiner's expression and felt nervous. From the corner of his eye, he saw the waiter delivering the packed glass to Suleun. He couldn't help but look up and said, "Miss Suer, this glass is not as good as." Okay. Suleun met Li Rui's gaze, and there seemed to be loneliness hidden in his eyes. "If my sister likes it, just give it to her. After all, Mr. Li will pay for it. Mr. Li can give it to anyone he wants." After saying that, Suleun turned around and walked towards the stairs. Li Rui looked at her back, her expression just now reappeared in his mind, and he couldn't help but take a step forward. "Take this glass. Since I said I would give it to you, I will not break my promise. At first I didn't like it, I just wanted to grab something Suleun liked. so that Suleun could understand how much Li Rui cared about him. But I didn't expect it to be like this. Suwainer froze on the spot and looked at Li Rui in disbelief. What was he talking about? Suleun, who had his back to the two of them, curled his lips and smiled. There was no hint of loneliness in his eyes. But she was also surprised. She didn't expect Li Rui to be so smart. Suleun turned to look at Li Rui, but Sister Wanner also likes this very much. It's okay, I will give her another set in half a month. When he said this, Li Rui's tone was much softer. Perhaps I felt that giving him a set of glasses made me closer to Suleun. Hush the sarcasm in his eyes, Suleun looked at Suwanner behind Li Rui, the smile in his eyes could not be concealed. The jealous look on Suwanner's face now, isn't it what she often showed in her previous life? At that time, she loved Li Rui deeply and would become jealous whenever she saw the difference between Li Rui and Suwanner. Now seeing Suwanner's expression, I feel really relieved. Then thank Mr. Li, Lian Xian, and Kuliu, take the things and let's go. Yes, miss. Liangzin and Kuliu each held something and followed Suleun down the stairs. Second floor of Genbeo Pavilion. Suwanner's eyes widened. Suleun's behavior just now was clearly mocking her. It was just a set of glasses. Could it be that she felt that Li Rui really liked her? Wanner. Li Rui turned around and saw Suwanner's ferocious face, and was startled. Having known Suwanner for many years, he has never seen her look like this. Noticing that Li Rui had a strange look on his face, Suwanner quickly took a breath and forced a smile. Brother Rui, I'm fine. I just didn't expect that Sister Yuner likes that glass so much. Yeah, I thought she was just like those noble ladies in the capital, only liking gold, silver, and jewelry, but I didn't expect she actually likes such things. Mentioning Suleun, Li Rui smiled a little more and seemed to find it very interesting. Suwanner tore off the handkerchief, but fortunately Li Rui didn't notice. But she became more and more dissatisfied. Even if she didn't like Li Rui, she wouldn't allow Li Rui to fall in love with Suleun. If he wants to Li Rui away, Suleun has to see if he really has the ability. If Suleun knew what Suwanner was thinking, he would probably laugh to tears. How stupid is she to rob Li Rui? However, Suleun didn't know and didn't care what Suwanner thought. It's just that she has found a pleasure now. Suwanner regards Li Rui as her belongings, so she really wants to see what Suwanner's reaction will be if this possession is taken away from her. Under the veil, Suleun's smile was undisguised. Kuliu and Liangzin followed Suleun and looked at each other. In the past, when they saw Mr. Li Rui and the eldest young lady, the young lady always felt uncomfortable. Why did she feel happy to see them today? Is it possible that the young lady really likes Mr. Li Rui? You two, please don't think too much about me. Suleun knew what the two girls behind him were thinking without turning around. When you get back, give this glass to the old lady. I don't want to see it. Kuliu and Liangzin nodded hurriedly. I understand. After returning to the Su mansion, Lian Xian sent the glass to the old lady. Kuliu followed Suleun back to the courtyard. As soon as he entered the courtyard gate, Grandma Zhang appeared out of nowhere. Kuliu, why did you become a maid? Why did you take the lady out? Mother Zhang looked at Kuliu with an angry face. Seeing Kuliu shrinking back, she hid behind Suleun. Mommy, it was all the young lady's idea. This girl, does she know how to help her out? Suleun smiled helplessly and said comfortingly, Mommy, don't be angry. I just went out to buy something. It's nothing. Miss, if you have what you want to buy, just let Kuliu Lian go to it. Why bother yourself? Of course, Granny Zhang would not really blame Suleun, so she pulled Suleun towards the house. You have gone out today, and you must take good care of yourself in the evening. There are all ladies at this palace banquet, miss, you can't lag behind. Her young lady is so good looking, she cannot be compared with others in this aspect. The elderly woman was always nagging, but Sulayun didn't dare to talk too much, for fear that if she said one more word, Grandma Zhang would have to read for a while. Old lady's yard. Lian Xian gave him a glass and left after completing the task. Mama Zhao looked at this novel thing, and then looked at the old lady's expression that she said she didn't want it, but was actually curious. She couldn't help but said, "Old lady, this second lady is really interested. She didn't pay for it anyway." Lian Xian also explained, saying that Li Rui, Su Weiner and Sulayun chose them together, and the second lady just borrowed flowers to offer to Buddha. "Old madam, you are right, but this thing looks interesting to me, so after all, I mean it with my heart." Mami Zhao smiled and said that although she also watched Su Weiner grow up, in the final analysis, she was serving the old lady. She was also happy to have an extra granddaughter to take care of the old lady. The old lady coughed lightly, put it away and put it on the cabinet over there. Knowing that the old lady was listening, Grandma Zhao exclaimed and put the glass on the cabinet. "What do you think this girl Yun thinks of Li Rui?" After Mami Zhao finished putting down the glass, the old lady spoke slowly. Aunt Zhao frowned and thought for a moment, "Old madam, no matter what Miss Yuner thinks, this important matter of marriage is the matchmaker's words ordered by the parents. Miss Warner and Mr. Li Rui have known each other since they were young. Who can't meet each other? They are said to be a perfect match, so this marriage is a sure thing. I just feel that Warner doesn't seem to be happy about this marriage." The old lady raised Su Warner single-handedly. How could she not feel this? Mother Zhao comforted her, "Maybe she is old and a little unfamiliar. Don't worry, old lady." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 108. Chapter 108. How much is the difference? Yeah. The old lady doesn't think so. But he couldn't answer the question for the moment, so he just sighed lightly and said no more. The maid came in from outside and said, "Old madam, my aunt is here." "Mother." Su Changjing had not yet entered the room, but the voice came in first. "You have some free time today, so you come to see me as your mother." The old lady glanced at Su Changjing, and her words seemed dissatisfied, but her tone was doting. Su Changjing hurriedly apologized to the old lady, "Mom, you also know that I have been busy looking for a house these days. Otherwise, when Lu Hong's official position comes down, the guests who come to the door will not know how to arrange it. Have you picked one that you think is suitable?" The old lady picked up the teacup, took a sip, and asked. Su Changjing also picked up the new tea served by the maid and held it in her hand. "I think it's suitable, but I haven't agreed on the price yet." "How much more is left?" "A piece of meat born from her own belly." The old lady took one look at Su Changjing and understood what she meant. "Mother, you also know that the Lu family doesn't have much money. I also spent a lot of my previous dowry, and now," Su Changjing glanced at the old lady hesitantly, and then said, "there is still a shortfall of 500 taels." The old lady nodded, her expression not changing much. The Su family's expenses for the next year were more than this amount, but she didn't feel it was too much at all. She also asked, "If there is anything missing, just take it from the house. We are a family and don't have to be restrained." "Then I'll thank my mother first." Su Changjing smiled happily and said that if the money matter was solved, the rest would not be a problem. She is the mother of 3 children, but she is still so childish. The old lady looked at her daughter, and of course she thought how she liked her. "The palace clothes will be ready for the palace banquet in a few days." "Mom, don't worry, my daughter will have made arrangements when she returns to Beijing, and she won't embarrass Lu Hong at the palace banquet." It was the first time that Lu Hong had been an official for so many years that they had the opportunity to attend a banquet in the palace. Su Changjing was somewhat looking forward to the palace banquet. The old lady shook her head helplessly, That's not what I'm talking about, it's the marriage between Huayuan and Shueya. As a mother, you should also be careful. Mom, this kid Huayuan has always had his own ideas. I don't have to worry about his marriage. As for Sueya, Su Changjing smiled when she mentioned Lu Huayuan, but when she mentioned Lu Sueya, her face dropped again. This kid, she has never been close to me, and I don't understand her thoughts. I just want to find someone who is similar to her. The old lady is well aware of Su Changjing's different treatment of her 3 children. Although she would treat Lu Shuiying better, if Su Changjing's attitude was noticed by outsiders, they would always gossip. I know that when you gave birth to this child, you went through hell. It's normal to be unhappy with her, but don't say these things outside. As for Shuiya's marriage, it can't be said that she will find someone similar. Lu Hong will still have to establish himself in the capital in the future. You must take good care of this girl's marriage. The old lady taught Su Changjing a serious lesson. If Shuiya's in-laws can be found well, they can also give Lu Hong some help. Mom, that's what you said. Su Changjing nodded repeatedly. She had not thought of this. Fortunately, her mother reminded her. My daughter will make good arrangements for Shuiya's marriage. The sky is bright and clear. Sulayun was pulled up from the bed by Granny Zhang. Miss, it's time to get up and get ready. Mammy Zhang ordered Lian Xian and Kui Lu to help the sleepy Sulayun to the dressing table. In the bronze mirror, Sulayun was too sleepy to open his eyes and let them play with them. Sulayun didn't wake up until he put on makeup and changed clothes. Miss, you look so beautiful like this. Lian Xian and Kui Lu looked at each other and couldn't take their eyes away. They have always known that their young lady is good looking. After all, she inherited her wife's appearance. However, Sulayun does not like to dress up on weekdays. Although she is barefaced, she is still beautiful. But now that she is wearing makeup, she has an indescribable charm. Mammy Zhang nodded with satisfaction and knocked on the 2 maids again. Okay, it's time to go out. You 2 must be smarter today and don't make any mistakes. Yes, Mammy. Liangzin and Kuliu followed Sulayun on the left and right, heading towards the gate of Su Mansion. In front of the home mansion, Su Changjing, Lu Sueya, and Lu Shuiying were already waiting by the door, while Sun Jiaro stood on the other side. As for the 4 men, they have already entered the palace. A moment later, the old lady and Su Weiner came. Lu Shuiying was still complacent about her dress today, but when she looked up at Su Weiner beside the old lady, her face dropped. Compared with Su Weiner, the brand new palace clothes she was wearing were somewhat overshadowed. Su Weiner's eyebrows were tender and she greeted several people one by one. The azure palace clothes on her body shone brightly in the sunlight. Although she inherited her looks from the Li family, she grew up in the capital, and the old lady also cultivated her carefully, and her overall style is difficult for ordinary people to match. If this were not the case, it would be difficult for Su Weiner to be named the most talented woman in the capital. Isn't Girl Yun here yet? The old lady looked around and saw no sign of Sulayun. Old slave, go and urge me. Mama Zhao turned around and entered the house. Before she had taken a few steps, she paused in her steps. Not far away, a figure approached. By the time Sulayun stood in front of them, no one had come back to their senses. Grandma, my granddaughter is late. The old lady stared at Sulayun closely, and for a moment, she looked away in shock. Yun Yetu is very similar to Sun, but she is a little deeper than Sun. She, an old woman, can't even see through it. Lu Shuiying couldn't help but said, it's true that Sister Yuner has kept us waiting for so long. But his eyes could not be separated from Sulayun, full of jealousy. Forget it about Su Weiner, why is it that even Sulayun, a village girl who grew up in the countryside, is prettier than her? Even more like a lady from the Ho family than Su Weiner. Perhaps I wasted time on dressing up. Sister Yuner must have put a lot of thought into dressing up so beautifully today. Suwaner seemed to be out of trouble, but every word showed that Suleun was quite scheming and deliberately dressed up to be so outstanding. After all, it is a royal banquet. As the young lady of the home mansion, Yuna represents the face of the home mansion. Yuna dare not fool around and lose the face of the home mansion. Suleun responded calmly and with reasonable words that made it impossible to find any problems. However, Yuna really didn't pay attention to the time. He thought it was time to set off, so he only prepared a quarter of an hour early. Unexpectedly, he still made everyone wait for Yuna for a few steps. It was still a quarter of an hour before SI hour. Strictly speaking, Suleun was not late, and he didn't even keep a few people waiting for too long. Suwaner and Lu Shuiying couldn't say anything to refute, so they closed their mouths one after another. But both of them had the same annoyance on their faces. They were actually defeated by Suleun. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 109. Chapter 109 The 13th Prince. Now that everyone is here, let's set off. The old lady looked at Suleun deeply, turned around and walked towards the carriage in front. The rest of the people also got on the carriage. Suleun and Sun Gro were sitting in a carriage. When you enter the palace today, don't be alarmed if you see a noble person. My mother will be by your side in everything. Sun Gro was worried that Suleun would lose his etiquette if he met the emperor, the queen mother, and she couldn't help but remind them. The carriage started rocking. Suleun smiled and nodded, "Don't worry about Yuna. When you arrive outside the palace gate, you need to get off the carriage." With the eunuchs leading them, the group walked towards the palace. The palace banquet was held in Vyang Palace. As soon as he entered the palace, Suleun felt a lot of eyes falling on him. She looked straight ahead without any panic. The old lady took Suchangjing and Sun Gro to meet the queen mother, so when they entered the palace, they were the only juniors. The maids of Lotus Heart Kualai were taken to the side hall to wait. Fortunately, there are mostly young people around. Suleun found a secluded corner to sit down, and the palace maid served hot tea and cakes. Elder sister. Hearing the sound, Suleun glanced around and saw that it was Lin Qingqing whom he had seen last time in Shangshu Mansion. She also carries the sachet given to her by Suleun around her waist. The person following behind was Mrs. Lin. Mrs. Lin. Suleun stood up and saluted Mrs. Lin. The latter's face was filled with joy. "Miss Suer, it's good that you are here." The maid didn't pay attention when she went out, and Qingqing came with her. "I'm going to see the Queen Mother, and I can't take Qingqing with me. Can I trouble you? Can you help me take a look at Qingqing?" Lin Qingqing ran to Suleun and hugged her leg. A pair of round eyes looked at Suleun. "Mrs. Lin, go ahead, I'll take care of Qingqing." Suleun thought for a while and did not refuse. It was not a bad thing to let Mrs. Lin owe a favor. What's more, she doesn't hate Lin Qingqing. "That's great." Mrs. Lin breathed a sigh of relief, squatted down and told Lin Qingqing, "Qingqing, stay with my sister and don't wander around. Do you understand?" "Mom, Qingqing will stay with my sister and won't wander around." Mrs. Lin sighed and turned to leave without caring much. He was still a child after all. After sitting blankly for a while, Lin Qingqing pulled off the corner of Suleun's clothes. "Sister, Qingqing wants to go to the toilet." "It's not easy to let a child hold it in." Suleun asked the palace maid, and then took Lin Qingqing to the toilet. It was just a little far away from Vyang Palace, and the two of them walked for a while before they arrived. Suleun was waiting on the side, but saw a person dressed as a palace maid running out of a palace from a distance. He looked around before sneaking away. There was a rockery in front of Suleun, so the palace maid could not see her. Sister, Ching Ching is fine. Lin Ching Ching walked to Sulayun and looked over. Sister, what are you looking at? Ching Ching, just stand here and wait for my sister. Seeing Lin Qianqian nodding obediently, Sulayun ran towards the palace where the maid came out. She also saw the palace maid's movements, and then suddenly thought that something big happened at the palace banquet in her previous life. At that time, she had a rash on her face and her veil fell off again. She couldn't stand the advice of everyone and left early. Later, she heard that a prince had died. The body was found in a palace. The palace door was locked. Sulayun looked at the door lock and could only look in through the gap in the door. Sure enough, he saw a small figure lying on the ground, not knowing whether he was alive or dead. She walked around the palace, and a window was pushed open. Sulayun lifted up his skirt, climbed through the window, and hurried to the little boy's side. Still breathing. Sulayun unbuttoned his collar. The boy's hands and feet were shaking and his lips turned purple. It is what an asthma attack looks like. She took off the brocade pouch from her waist and gave him the white pill inside to take. Then he took out the silver needle and inserted it into several acupuncture points on the top of his head. As soon as the last needle fell, rapid footsteps and shouts were heard outside the house. 13th Prince, where are you? Go and look for it over there. The 13th Prince. Yes, it was the 13th Prince who died on the day of the palace banquet. His mother-in-law is the concubine Qin who is currently favored. The door of the palace was suddenly opened, and many people poured in. When he saw the 13 princes on the ground, their faces all turned pale. Go to the imperial doctor quickly. The guards wanted to pick up the 13th prince, but Sulayun said quickly, be careful, don't knock off those silver needles. The guards looked at each other and slowed down their movements. The leading guard glanced at Sulayun and said, Miss, please come with us. After all, the accident happened to a prince, and Sulayun happened to appear next to him, so it was a little hard to explain. Sulayun nodded, she was not worried. Following the people out of the palace, Lin Qingqing stood not far away, and Sulayun waved to her. Sister, were you rescuing someone just now? How do you know? Sulayun was stunned, and then looked at the open window not far away. Lin Qingqing must have followed her when she climbed through the window and saw her performing the acupuncture. Brother, guard, could you please find someone to take Miss Lin back to Viang Palace, she has nothing to do with this matter. Sulayun didn't want this matter to affect Lin Qingqing, so he asked the commander of the guards. The guard commander glanced at Lin Qingqing and called a guard over, take Miss Lin back to Viang Palace. Elder sister. Lin Qingqing looked at Sulayun worriedly. Although she was young, she could feel that the atmosphere at this time was not good. Sulayun touched her head and said, I'll be fine. Just go back to Viang Palace. Otherwise, you should be worried if Mrs. Lin comes back and doesn't see you. I know, sister, you have to be careful too. Lin Qingqing followed the guard, turning back step by step, and finally left. Sulayun followed the guards all the way to concubine Qin's palace. The atmosphere in the palace was very tense. As soon as concubine Qin heard about the situation of the 13th prince, her face turned pale. At this time, he looked anxiously into the room, where the imperial doctor was treating the 13th prince. My dearest concubine, this young lady was in the palace at that time. The guard commander took Sulayun with him. Seeing concubine Qin, Sulayun took a deep breath and saluted, people's daughter Sulayun has seen the concubine. Concubine Qin is not old, but her outfit is a bit old-fashioned. Fortunately, he has a beautiful face and a pair of eye-catching red phoenix eyes, so it is no wonder that he was favored by the Holy Spirit. At present, in the harem, apart from the Queen Mother, Qin Gaifei has the highest rank. Concubine Qin paid no attention to her, and her eyes were full of her own children. Until the doctor came out of the house. Wu Yi, how is Linner? Don't worry, my dear concubine, the 13th prince is fine. When Dr. Wu said this, he was really relieved. He didn't know who the capable person was who saved the 13th prince by administering the acupuncture, otherwise the 13th prince might have run out of breath before he came. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 110. Chapter 110. No one proves. As soon as concubine Qin heard this, her tense mood relaxed. As long as it's okay, it'll be okay, as long as it's okay. She patted her chest and sat down on the chair. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Sulayun, who was still kneeling not far away, and his face suddenly became condensed. Concubine Qin looked at the guard commander on one side and said, Wei Ya, is this person the murderer of the 13th prince? Wei Ya pursed his lips and said hesitantly, when I find the 13th prince, this lady will be nearby, but she is not the murderer of the 13th prince. I haven't found out yet. He glanced at Sulayun and felt that it couldn't be her. But in front of concubine Qin, he could not speak so bluntly. Concubine Qin looked Sulayun up and down. She was wearing palace clothes and must be a young lady from a certain family. What did you just say your name was? Sulayun was not annoyed after being ignored for a long time. He still said respectfully, Your Majesty, my daughter's name is Sulayun. Su. Concubine Qin thought about the people named Su in the capital, but she seemed to have never heard of this name. Just as he was about to speak, Dr. Wu said in surprise, It turns out to be Miss Su Er. The last time I saw Miss Su Er, her face was still covered in red rash. It took me a while to recognize her. After saying that, Imperial Physician Wu said to concubine Qin, My dear concubine, this Miss Sulayun is the second young lady who has just been brought back from the Suhao mansion. Sulayun noticed Wu Yi's expression and knew that he was helping him out. Are you the granddaughter of General Sun? Concubine Qin glanced at Sulayun a few more times. Suho's daughter was nothing, the focus was on the Sun family. She heard in the palace that she had the wrong child. This Sulayun is the only legitimate daughter of the Ho family. It's my grandfather. Sulayun returned. Concubine Qin knocked on the table and said, Hurry up and help Miss Su up and give her a seat. It's because I didn't entertain you well, so don't take it to heart, Miss Su. It is human nature for the imperial concubine to care about the 13th prince. Sulayun returned with a smile and was helped up by the palace maid. Having been kneeling for a long time, my legs are still a little sore and numb. She rubbed it a few times without looking for any traces, then sat down on a chair nearby. Today is a palace banquet. Logically speaking, Miss Su should be in Vyang Palace. How could she meet the 13th prince? Concubine Qin narrowed her eyes and stared at Sulayun. After all, it was her first time to see Sulayun. Such a coincidence made her worry. The emperor has been slow to establish a prince, and all the women in the harem are working hard, thinking that there is still a chance to get a prince. If he is established as a prince, the mother will be more valuable based on the son, which is not a good thing. And Sulayun's elder brother Suye is the companion of King Jin, so there is no guarantee that the Su family and the Sun family have joined King Jin. Sulayun knew exactly what concubine Qin was thinking. She met Qin Gaifei's probing eyes and said calmly, The imperial concubine is aware that people have 3 urgent needs. After asking the palace maid, she came out for convenience and saw a person sneaking out of the palace. Worried about something, the civilian girl then he went to check and found the 13th prince lying in the palace. Can anyone prove what you are saying? These words sounded very coincidental, and concubine Qin couldn't help but feel a little more suspicious. Sulayun pursed his lips and shook his head, There is no one. Although Lin Qingqing saw her saving people, Sulayun didn't want to involve her. Concubine Qin's face darkened a little, Since no one can prove it, how can I believe what you said, Miss Su? The daughter of the people does not dare to lie, but there are some things that the daughter of the people wants to explain to the imperial concubine in private. Privately, concubine Qin looked around. How about privately? Please also ask the empress to withdraw from the attendance, and you can leave Dr. Wu and your personal maid behind. Sulayun arrived slowly. This request is not too much. Concubine Qin thought about it and expected that Sulayun would not be able to do anything in this situation. You all go down and wait outside. Wei Ye responded and led the guards to retreat. Other maids and eunuchs also left the room one after another, leaving only 2 personal maids. She is also the most trusted maid of concubine Qin. Can we talk now? Concubine Qin's tone was a little impatient. The 13th prince was fine now, and she could still talk to Sulayun. If something happened to the 13th prince, Sulayun would have been imprisoned in the sky prison long ago. Yi Wu, the 13th prince is fine. Is it because the silver needles on his head played a role? Sulayun did not directly answer Qin Gaifei's words, but asked the imperial Dr. Wu. Physician Wu was stunned and looked at Sulayun doubtfully. Does second Miss Su know who gave the acupuncture to the 13th prince? Same, since second Miss Su was with the 13th prince at that time, she must have known who performed the acupuncture on the 13th prince. Physician Wu didn't think at all that perhaps the person who performed the acupuncture was Sulayun. After all, he went to the home mansion for medical treatment at that time, and Sulayun didn't seem to know much about medical skills. It was those silver needles that saved my child's life. Concubine Qin also asked a question immediately. Physician Wu didn't dare to hide it. Hui, it's true. If it weren't for those few silver needles, the 13th prince would probably. He did not say the rest of the words, but everyone present knew it. Concubine Qin felt that her hands and feet were cold again, and she couldn't help but said, Miss Su-er, I wonder who this person is. I must thank you very much. She was just one step away from losing her child. Thinking of this, concubine Qin's eyes flashed with anger. Who did this to her child? Mother, before I answer my question, I hope you can promise me something. Concubine Qin frowned slightly. What's the matter? I hope that what the women in this house said today will not spread. It's just a small matter, I'll take care of it. After Qin Gaifei finished speaking, she glanced at Dr. Wu and the 2 personal maids. The 3 of them also nodded quickly in response. Seeing this, Sulayun said calmly, the civilian girl was with the 13th prince at the time, and she was rescuing him. It's you. Concubine Qin's eyes widened, and Dr. Wu on the side couldn't help but open her mouth. How could it be Miss Su-er? If she knows medical skills, why can't she see the red Heiji poison? Or? Physician Wu did not dare to think further, fearing that there would be a fight within the house. He had seen a lot in the palace, so he quickly accepted the matter. But he was still surprised and couldn't help but look at Sulayun. Concubine Qin took a long time to react. Did she hear that Miss Su was brought back from a place like Jingzhou and that she had medical skills? Miss Su-er, you must know that those who deceive me will never end well. Concubine Qin's voice was colder and threatening. Sulayun was not afraid, and met Qin Gaifei's eyes. This is the reason why the daughter of the people left Dr. Wu. I guess Dr. Wu hasn't removed those silver needles yet, right? The lower official is not capable enough and cannot be removed. Physician Wu sighed. He had been practicing medicine for many years, but he had never seen such a strange acupuncture method. A single hair move affects the whole body. If he took the wrong one, he was afraid that he would kill the 13th prince. Sulayun smiled and said, Dr. Wu need not be so humble. This formation was also created by my mentor. It is really difficult for others to get the needle. She looked at Concubine Qin and said, Concubine Qin, may I allow the daughter of the common people to remove the silver needle for the 13th prince? End of this chapter.